this little program, I'm hoping to be able to complete the branch for my barn owl drawing. I'm going to start the image off with the Spectrum Noir Illustrator and graphic pens, and then come through as I have with the owl and just add in a little bit of colour pencil. So the first pen that I'm going to use is going to be the ivory. This is because I just want that base layer of ink down. So I just need to shove most of the pencils over to the other side. I tend to have pencils one side, pens the other. And the tree that I've chosen to do is oak tree, so it's quite a textured type of bark. But I'm hoping that will complement the owl. So off we go. Right, so I'm using a slightly battered brush tip. And let's see. I'm just literally putting down a base coat. The tip of my pen isn't really working anymore, sadly. Then that comes up to there. But this is literally just like an undercoating. And you probably can see spotting on here. It's just where the deposits of the ink are ending up, but those will be worked out. So I'm not overly worried about that. Okay, so next I'm going to come through with, let's see, a GB2. And this, I'm just going to start mapping out the shapes of the wood. And to start with, I'm just going to be doing random shapes. A bit like when working with the owl. I'm just blocking in areas of colour and where I do want features. And then as I build up the layers, the detail will change and the drawing will become kind of, it'll make more sense. At least that's the plan. That's bobbling a bit. I'm just going to lift this slightly and give it a pull. I'm not going too close to the owl because I don't want these colours to bleed in or risk affecting the work that I've done. This bit on the side is very, very loose. Done the ivory, so let's see. Have I got BG4 in the house? BG4. Right, this should be quite dark grey. I'm giving a little bit of a gap around the feet and the legs because I'm going to come in and just polish those bits up later. My piece of tape in the corner is going to be a problem. I get the feeling it's too tacky. Or are we going to be really lucky? No, we're not going to be lucky. Okay, I thought it wasn't going to be that tacky, but it has. So what I'll do is I'll put the tape just there. That's going to just, that little bit in the corner where the tape's torn the paper, that is going to probably make the ink go a little bit of a funny colour. That's why what I was saying in one of the earlier videos with this project is if you're going to use framing tape, just make sure that you've taken as much of the sticky off as needed, because if you make it too sticky, with a lot of papers it will take the couple of first layers off the paper, which can be a bit of a pain. But I think I should be able to disguise that quite well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in with a IGI from the main Spectrum Noir set. This is just to add a little bit of the greyness that I need. And also it'll act as a softener for the rest of the pen. I'm just using that chisel nib just to get the colour laid down. Okay, so that's the first part of the undercoat. And now I'm going to use the FS7 just to bring in a little bit of colour here and there. And it's just going to be squiggles, because this is just adding a little bit of warmth, because I used a warm grey in there already. And it's that colour continuity again. There's literally just a couple of squiggles in there. And then I reckon LY1. And I'm just going to start to define a couple of the shapes. So tonight there's a show on Hachanda, which is the home of hobbies, arts and crafts and things. It's just like a TV shopping channel, a bit like Create and Craft kind of thing. They're going to be showing off the new Spectrum aquatint pens. I've seen the dies used, but not in pen form. So I'm going to make sure I watch that. So around 5 o'clock, just time check. Yeah. Around 5 o'clock, I'm probably going to be literally glued to TV, because if their previous one day special hasn't lasted, then they can bring the next one day special forward. So sometimes you get an extra long show. And they also have really nice demonstrators on there. So, but I don't normally buy straight away when I see things on TV. I like to find the reviews. But I do like the idea of the backgrounds you can do. But a lot of them seem to be really bold colours. So I'll say interested, but have to watch the programme to see what I really think of it. Right, now for that purple. I'm going to use this to block in a couple of areas. Right, so now I'm going to go on to the, let's see, BG4 I've used, so, IG6? I think it's IG6. I'm going to use a small nib. I'll just put in my bin. Just quickly checking my reference picture. Right, so that's my rough guides of where I want my marks. Now I'm thinking of using, let's see, a little bit of MB2. You'll see a lot of the colours have different effects. Once you start layering them, they bleach and they move how the colour looks. So you can get completely different colours by just playing around with them a little bit and overlayering them. I'm going to use a chisel nib on this one. Most oak trees tend to have a certain amount of algae and mossy stuff and such, and that's why I used a yellow green in there, just to give it a very, very light hint. Now I'm going to come back over with that IGI again, and this hopefully should blend down the colours and start to soften them up. I'm not going all the way up to the owl because I don't want the ink to bleed that way. I can patch that up later. Okay, so now I'm going back to the, let's see, I wonder if, oh mate, I'm going to check my pen stash. I've got anything more powerful. Okay, so I've just found a oak tree GB9 now. Oh, that's very dark. Let's see what happens when we add this. So once again, I can soften these colours down a little bit. Isn't that funny, finding a pen called oak tree? Actually, most oak trees are more of a grey colour than a brown colour. But it depends on the age of the tree, where it's growing, and soil and water conditions, of course. And just put some pockets of dark areas in. And I'm making sure that my lines aren't straight. I want to leave some texture in there. Let's speed this up a little bit. comes the other side. Leaving the detail a little bit looser on this area because it's going to be further away. Okay, now I'm going to go for the, let's see, IG2 I think. Yeah. I'm going to use that to go over the brown. I know that seems really weird, kind of put one colour down and then put another colour on top, but it's the effect that the ink has with each other. Okay, now I'm going to try and find that goldish, let's try caramel actually. And I'm just going to fill in a few of those areas. So I'm starting to fill in the whiter areas and just bring warmth into the image. At least that's the plan. And the grey mixed in with colours like the caramel creates quite a soft greenish brown, so that's quite a good base colour. That's the lovely thing about markers, when you're working with them where you can keep on moving the colours around, you don't always have to get mud when you mix the markers together. You can get some fascinating and really good useful colours. And it's always handy just to maybe even jot a couple down on a scrapbook of paper if you find a colour combination that you really like. So just add the same effect to the back. Okay, now I really want to add in some shadow, so I'm thinking that brown, the oak brown, I'm going to add a tiny layer just to the bottom, and this is going to come in quite handy because I'm actually going to bleed it out. I'm going to do a small area at a time, and I need to work quite fast with this. Let's get my brush. Okay, then back in with it. I'm just going to define little areas. I'm not so worrying about highlights because I can use the white pencils to push any highlights. Just want to soften it up. And just define a few bits of the tree. Now I'm going to do the same on the other side, but it's going to be a slightly smaller amount. I just need to check that angle actually. This bit I've got to be a little bit more gentle because I really don't want that owl to actually get hit by the bleed. Tiny bit back. And pushed. This is why brush nibs can be so much fun to use, because even when you're not using full control, you can still get some amazing effects. Okay. Right, now I had a greenish colour. L1? Why? Yeah, just right. Okay, bring in the LY one. This is once again just to blend in and just add a little bit of of natural movement and colour into the image. I'm not worried about the brown being too strong, because once I start working into the pencil, a lot of that's going to be covered up with the detail. And adding a lighter colour into that dark area will, ouch, sorry, that's my ankle, that will change the effect and add little bleach spots into there. I don't want this too yellow back here, but so just going back and looking at the reference drawing, taking a step back from the image, I'm over here. And actually, I'm quite happy with that for a tree, for the ink part. In fact, the only thing that I will do is I'm going to bring back the good old ivory, our friend. Oh, I wish this nib wasn't mangled. And I'm going to use it just to bleach out a little bit up here, just to soften that up. And I'm going to do the same just on this top row up here. I'm going to push that shadow a tiny bit more. I'm dicing with danger here, I tell you. Ooh, because this pen I think is leaking. Dun, dun, dun. Right. The owl's tail is underneath the body, so the shadow's got to be underneath. Sadly, my reference photo doesn't actually give me any detail on where the shadow is. Right, now this time I'm going to be using the bullet tip, quite literally because I seriously don't want to go into the owl. The bullet tip is like a kind of safety net. I've got this far, I'm not messing it up. Now, oddly enough, I didn't take a copy last night, even though I had planned to take a copy of the owl and then work on that. I didn't take one in the end. I felt confident enough with my plan that I've gone ahead with it. Soften that bit there up. Right, that bit, let's look at that patches. So I'm quite happy with that for that bit. Now I've got a little bit of putty rubber around here. I'm just going to take out a couple of the fake lines that I'd put in. So I don't need these anymore. Come back here. I can take out really any pencil guidelines that I've got just on there. The nice thing about these markers is that when you go into the darker colours you can't really see your original pencil marks, which is quite nice. Right, so I'm going to add a little bit of detail now in pencil to the wood. Would you believe it? So I'm going to start off with a light grey. Where's my bin gone? Because it's sharpening time. So pens over there. And I think I've got more pencils. Right. Sharpening, sharpening. Put it right over there. Sorry about the light. Bear with me. Okay, I'm just going to hold a book just to the side. Yeah, sorry about this. I'm really happy the sun is shining, believe me. I've missed the sunshine. Just picked a slightly inconvenient moment. So I'm just going to go around each of the little shapes just with a very light grey pencil. Keeping it quite random. It's just to take out the sharpness of any white areas. There we go. Right. Now, next colour. Kind of mossy colour. Let's not do it. Okay, just going to add in a kind of little greenish overcast here and there. A lot of this will be toned down once I start to use the browns. But it's just to add a little bit of life into the tree. actually I'm feeling quite pleased with that effect. That's coming along. Right, step back. I still don't quite know what to do about the actual background, so all this blank space, I'm still really torn, because I don't want it so cluttered that you lose focus on the main subject, but I don't know if I like it pure white. I could do a blurry background in colour pencils, just soft greens. I think once I've got this bit of wood, that's where I'm going to have to copy it. So I'll get a photocopy and then I'll put a background in. Now, I had hoped to have this image ready this week to go to print for next week's show. I'm not gonna, I don't think. I still want to. It just means sending people over to the printer with the stuff and having to kind of have people run back and forward for me, and I don't like using people. Even if they offer to do it, I really don't like to kind of use and abuse people. Just tidy up a couple of loose ends there. Right, but I'm going to just check my screen because this looks different how I see it to how it shows on screen. So if you were here yesterday and you saw how I was taking photos on my camera, just to see what the colour levels came up as differently, I'm just doing that quick check. How's it looking? It's not bad. Got an issue there. Right, that's cool, that's cool. And while I'm over there, just to say thank you very much to everybody who's popped along and has been watching this and giving me support and such. It's lovely to have you here, and thank you for popping by, and you're always welcome. Believe me, if I could hand out cookies, I would. And just to make you guys smile, it's funny me doing an owl drawing because in the last month I went off to my local Dorset Wildlife Trust, and I've always wanted one of these, and I went and got one. It's an owl hoot. It's adorable. It's basically a lump of wood with a hole cut out of it, and proper twiggy wood, and you blow into that end and it makes a woohoo sound, and depending on how hard you blow on it and the speed and all of that depends on the type of woohoo you get out of it. It did cost a little bit of cash, but I can now annoy the tawny owls in my area. And we have a breeding pair, so the male kind of makes a coo-wee, and then you get the female going woo, and so all evening all you get is this little coo-wee, coo-wee, woo. It's brilliant. So anyway, enough of the owl impersonations. But yeah, if you can't tell, I do love my wildlife. I miss my badgers. That used to be a highlight, going out into the garden and being able to literally just sit 3 foot from a feeding badger without any problems at all. There was a set literally just round the corner from us, and I haven't seen the badgers for a year, but we know the house where the set was literally on the side of, they had new people, and there's been some vandalism to it, so we think that they were legally gotten rid of. So the homeowner could have complained that they were damaging the property and asked for a licence to have the poor things removed. I'm hoping that's not what happened. I'm hoping maybe they all decided to pack up and move. You know, I'd rather have the happy fairy story end. But yeah, I've sat with badgers, I've sat with foxes before. Actually took care of an injured fox for a while. They like medicated cat food, eggs and potatoes. And she was lovely. mean, I've never really been attacked by a wild animal. During the ruts in October, I was at a deer park, and there were some stags which had kind of had their little fight and sat down, quite chilling out. So I went and sat with them. Full respect, of course. I'm not going to go and pet a stag with what was it? They had about 12 points on the antlers, but it was just a case of sitting down quietly and just being in the animal's presence. I think the only time I've ever actually been injured by an animal, and that was a farm animal, that was a pygmy goat, and it basically escaped from its pen in the middle of a country show. So this pygmy goat's about to run straight into the hound section of the country show, and so I made a dive, grabbed it, lifted it up, but I couldn't get it over the fence to put it back into the enclosure, and the people who were running the enclosure were too busy chinwigging. So I tried to lift it up, and it swung its head around straight into the side of my head. I've never seen so many stars. Pygmy goats may be small, but they seriously pack a punch, especially if they hit you in the side of the head. But I managed to kind of get it back over the fence, and I had a headache for the rest of the day. But it wasn't the goat's fault, really. I mean, if I'd been taller, well, if I was taller, then I would have been able to get the goat over properly. But yeah, I don't recommend manhandling any pygmy goats. I mean, sometimes my parents get a bit scared when I get close to wildlife. They're like, "Oh my God, get away from that, get away from that." But I tend to be able to read the signs of when an animal's happy or sad. I mean, if somebody told me there was a lion sat outside, I wouldn't run straight out and go and give it a hug. I might open the door and waft a bit of tuna outside in a bowl, but I certainly wouldn't go and pet one. I respect them too much. Beautiful animals. But back to the drawing. As you can see, I'm just building up a little bit of detail, just scratchy marks, just with the colour pencils. Just to put some texture in there. Not too much though on this side, because once again I want this to look a little bit more faded. Throwing in some shadows where I know I'm going to need them. I'm trying to slow down a bit. Right, so now what I'm going to do is come back to that green and just widen off a few of the darker parts of the bark. And then we'll come back in with a darker colour and just push that again. It's just to get a little bit of definition and also to add depth, because the kind of gaps in the bark are very deep. Well, they're deeper than you'd expect them to be. Now back to the brown. This time I'm pushing a little bit harder, not to make the brown darker, but just so that I can get a good kind of texture on there. The thing is, even though this probably looks very sharp right now, it'll be softened out once I come through with a couple more tones. And that's also why I've got soft green underneath. This time I'm going to only put a tiny amount of brown marks on this other side. So it's going to go from strong detail and then slowly go soft. But the softness isn't going to happen quite behind the owl. I'm going to keep a little bit of the sharp area just in the shadow. There we go. Right. Now I'm just going to use that light grey to come in and just reshape couple of little bits and soften out a couple of those lines. So like with the markers, it's just quite literally work in, work out, kind of come back and forward and back and forward. Didn't realise I was in the way, sorry. Quick check of my reference picture. I could push the detail of the wood quite a lot, but I just want it to stay as balanced and I want it to stay as soft and as sharp as the owl is, so I'm not going to push it too much. Right. Put that bit in there. So next I need to just fix those feet. What I do is I'm going to leave the wood for now, fix the feet, then come back. Because whatever I do to the feet will look different once I've started doing the wood. So if I get them fixed, then I can match the wood up much better. So footsie index. So I need, yeah. Okay. Okay, just sharpen these guys. The luminance pencils are slightly fatter than the Faber-Castells, so always make sure you've got a couple of decent, well, decent different sharpeners.
I'm using the butterfly there that is available on the show, just using the one, the one wing butterfly. Looks like.
Apologies about that. That's the only problem with Chanda, is that when their channels change over, or after a certain amount of time, all of a sudden, even though you've got it on mute, it powers back on the sound. So my apologies about that. You just can't get the TV channels nowadays. Right, so I'm going to use a circle motion with this pink. Actually, straight away I've seen somewhere where I can do some quick editing. And this is why I left the gap. So I can now just redefine the feet. Actually, that needs to be showing, that's good. So yeah, so I'm just going to use the pink to act as an undercoat. Actually, I'm just going to quickly check something.
People doing their garden.
Right, sorry about that. I just needed to quickly double check that the show that I'm waiting for hasn't been bumped forward. And the good news is it hasn't. Yay! Just makes my life a bit easier. Right, so the claws have actually got a bit of a purple tint to them. So that's what we're going to add. And this time I'm going to use a Prismacolor. Okay, this isn't quite the purple that I hoped, but it'll do. I'm going to layer it up. And actually it makes it easy to spot them. And then there's kind of a bluish tint as well. Claw's mounted back here. The claw doesn't come out directly in the middle of the foot. It's like our nail, it comes up from the top. So if you're going to go out and draw wildlife and stuff, please definitely check out the anatomy of the animal. Even if you decide, oh, I'm going to go to a farm and draw the pigs, take a good gander at a anatomy book on the animals so that you've got a nice idea of what you're planning on drawing. It just helps so much when you're a bit more prepared and you understand the animal. Yeah, I guess you guys are probably thinking, oh my god, what's she doing? I'm making black. But I'm using the other colours to build it up. Start to add in the detail. Sorry about that. Would you believe that was actually my mum from the other side of the house? That's how thin the walls are here. And I'm not ready for dinner yet. Dinner can wait. Okay, and pull those colours back. Just add in some little bits of foot detail. Let's sharpen that one. Okay, so I'm going to call it a stop there, and what I do is have lunch because sounds like dinner has been cooked, so I am going to be required at the table shortly. And what I'll do is I'm going to then go and take a copy of this drawing and see what I like as a background. Do I prefer a coloured background, or do I prefer it like this? And then go from there. And then it's literally just cleaning up a little bit of the detail and adding a little bit of detail here and there, and that will probably complete the image. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this, and I hope this has helped inspire you to have a go and try something completely different, because you never know where you'll end up. Right, step away from the drawing, there is a din-dins on the table. So this has been pretty much the way that I would draw a barn owl in Spectrum Noir graphic and Illustrator pens, followed up by some colour pencil, Titan and neatening work. So as I say, I hope this has inspired you to have a go and get creative. So till next time, have a lovely evening, take care, and happy drawing to you all.